In this video, I want to walk you through how to create a story map. Story maps allow you to integrate text and images in a very dynamic way, and I think you'll find it an interesting platform on which to present your work. Before you get going, you'd obviously do a lot of your writing in a Word document or similar. You'd have much of your writing done. You will have carried out your analyses and created pictures, PNGs, or TIFFs of your maps and charts and anything like that. So that they'd be at the ready. Okay, but the first thing you would do is go to ArcGIS StoryMaps, and that's just storymaps.arcgis.com. Okay, and then you would log in, sign in to ArcGIS StoryMaps, and you'd use the same login information that you use to get into ArcGIS Pro. Okay. And once you're here, you'd go over here to the right and create a story, start from scratch. Now, as you build this, the key thing to remember is that you don't have to save anything. Much like Google Docs, any changes you make to this story will be saved automatically. Okay, so you don't have to worry about losing your work or anything like that. It'll be on your ArcGIS StoryMaps account. Okay. Once you're here, I would recommend doing a couple of things before you really get moving. Is go to Design at the top here and choose a cover design. You can always go back and change this later, so nothing's set in stone. But choose one that you want to work with to start. I would also recommend toggling on navigation. What that does is as you create headings, they will become interactive elements in a table of contents at the top of your story map. Okay, click that. The other thing is you can play around with themes. I recommend sticking with Summit or Slate. You want your story to be the primary thing that people are seeing, not sort of distracting color schemes, and some of these other ones get a little distracting. Okay, and you can look at featured themes gallery, but in the end, let the focus be on your images, your text, and not the kind of color scheme and so on. So I tend towards Slate myself. The other thing you can add is a logo, and this will show up at the top of your story map in this top banner where your title will ultimately go, but you can also put a little CC logo. So one of the things you could do if you go to Colorado College website is you can look at CC logos, and you could take a screenshot of one of the ones you like and save it to your desktop. I've already done that. So I'm going to upload that logo and it'll show up right up here and next to my title once I'm done. Okay, you can play around with on the cover as well, so it'll show up there. Not bad. Okay, and then the story title, Redline in Urban Canopy, or whatever your title is, and then you can have a subtitle would go here, whatever it is. Okay, and your name also is already appearing, and draft will appear here until you publish it. And then of course you need a cover image, so you would previously have downloaded, or you can download at this point, different images. So I have one of Denver's redlining map, so I can add that. And anytime you add an image like that, I recommend playing around with, what's the more options. You can replace image, you can delete. What's the cogwheel here? You can look at display, properties. Nothing much you can do with that particular image. So, but you'll see it later on that we might want to play around with that. Then the other thing is you can switch the panel placement by clicking these two arrows. So you can play around with the organization and so on. So you move on. And these add buttons are where you start to add the particular elements of your story. And this can be headings, text, images, sidecars, embedded websites, and so on. Well, I'll show you each of those in turn. Okay, so to start, I'm going to click and add text. I'm going to want it to be a heading. I'm going to do heading 1, and let's just call this abstract. And if I want to change the location, I just highlight and then I can center it. Okay. And then underneath I'll add text. And this is where, you'll have a Word document or wherever you're keeping your stuff. I'm just going to grab some text off my syllabus. So you just copy, go back here, and again you lose your place, but you just hit the plus sign again, add text, and then paste it. Right click and paste. Okay. So then you can go to the next thing. I'm going to add another heading. So instead of paragraph, get that, and we'll go to introduction. Oops. Try this again. Text, heading, introduction. Okay, if I want to change the placement, just start highlighting some of that, and so on. Okay. And then we can add more text. Just grab it. Oops. Oh, there we go. So I just pasted more text in there and so on. The little plus signs can get a little annoying. They seem to populate, multiple times. It gets kind of annoying. If you do ever find that text is creates an unwelcome gap, you can always find this little traction pad and drag to reorder. And if I click that up and try to bring it as close as possible, it'll get rid of that space. Okay. So you're still going to have spaces between your paragraphs, but you can get rid of excess spaces. Okay. But you'll notice that as I added headings, I have this dynamic table of contents that emerges around each. Okay. So let's say in my introduction I want to show the University of Richmond's mapping inequality website. So I would go to that site. I'm looking at their, exploring their maps. I know I'm going to mess around with different cities here, but I'll just zoom in on Minneapolis. So let's say we just want to start here just for the sake of it. What you do is you get to where you want and then highlight the URL and copy. And here I'm going to embed down here. That allows us to embed web apps, dashboards, and so on. So I'm going to embed and then paste that web link. And then it embeds the website within my story map, and I can play around with the size. You can also shrink it here to just more of a smaller card, if you will, but you can also have a larger image of the website. Okay. And you can play around with these. Either I'd probably go with this or maybe the card, for example. The other thing you can do is you don't have to embed the entire website. If I wanted to just embed a web link, I can just highlight text, use the little link sign there, and do the web link there. So that's less intrusive, but also not as prominent. So you got to think about what you want to be able to do with these. Okay. So that's how you can embed links and web pages within your story map. What about images? So let's say you've taken images of your graphs, your charts, your maps. A couple of different ways in which you can do this. I'm just going to grab, again, generic text just to kind of keep things flowing here so we can see. Okay. And then let's say I want to embed an image. You can browse for your files, and if you just embed an image, it'll let you do one. So I'm just going to add that here. And again, once it pops up, you want to play around. Notice none of my images are finely formatted. My legends are unformatted and so on. So these are just for examples. But you want to play around. So you click on the cogwheel and you think about whether you want it to fit image to screen. That gives it a smaller but more crisp look, that kind of stuff. So you kind of want to play around with and whether you want readers to be able to expand the image or not. Okay. So the other thing you can do here is if you look here, you can float to the left or float to the right and allow text to wrap around it. Or you can increase the size of the image, things like that. So if I click on that, and let's say I want to add text to float around it, you'll see that you'll get that kind of, let's say I want to move this text up as close to the text that follows. Oh, that was too far. There we go. So the text kind of wraps around that particular image and so on. Okay, but that's if you wanted to do one image, and you can always add a caption under the images. But what if you wanted to do multiple images? So you could do an image gallery. And here you can browse your files again, and I'll just grab a bunch of duplicate layouts. There's 4 of them. So again, you can play around with the size a little bit, but you also can play around with the cog here. You can try Jigsaw. It's probably not going to change much because they're all the same format. But so dynamic squares is probably your go-to. You can try film strip. I'm not a big fan of film strip because I don't like the added necessity of having to click over left and right. Dynamic square seems to work the best. Jigsaw, if you have pictures that are formatted to different sizes, might work. But if they're all the same size, then dynamic squares is probably your go-to approach. Okay. You can look at properties, nothing there. Okay. You can also rearrange. If you want 4, we want it to be 1, and hit save, all that kind of stuff. If you wanted to add more images, you can go and browse for more. Okay. And again, you can add a caption underneath. So that's how you can add image gallery, 2, 3, 8 images, if you will. Okay. You can also add a swipe. So swipes work well if you want to overlay 2 maps and kind of swipe back and forth to see each in turn. Okay. Now, when you do this, it should be done judiciously, and not just sort of randomly throw different maps together. There should be an intent, a purpose behind that swipe. But I'll show you how to do the swipe. And it's pretty simple. You just add an image on each side. If these are maps, they should be set to the same extent. So I'm just gonna, these are just fake maps, but add this one over there. And the other one on the right. And you can add a caption as well, but you can swipe back and forth if you want. Okay, so that's how you can do swipes. The other thing you can do is embed, let's say we want to do a sidecar. Sidecars are neat when you have either maps or charts or graphs that you want to talk through, and you want the write-up of each of those to kind of flow by. So I'm going to add a streetcar or a sidecar. And I usually go with the docked. You can try floating and so on, but I'm going to go with docked. And what happens is on the right, and I can switch these back and forth, but you can add an image on one side, and you can see the number of slides you have will appear here. So if I add, let's say, an image. Again, anytime an image gets added, I would always kind of check around. Click on the cog wheel. At this point in Sidecar, a lot of times the default is fill crop, and that might be the best way to go, but sometimes the fit do not crop gives you a crisper image, a smaller but crisper image. Especially with charts and graphs, I find that you have to go with the smaller, crisper version. Okay, so play around with that. And then again, what would be your write-up of that particular image that you wanted to add? This is where you go and grab your text and paste the text next that's associated with that image. And then you would add another image. So you just grab, see if we can grab, I'll just grab a really crude scatterplot matrix, let's say. Again, maybe it's set, the format is right, but sometimes you want to check to see if that fit do not crop results in a crisper look. And then you would paste your write-up of that element next to it, go to your next image. The other thing you can add in here is not just a single image or video, you could add a swipe. And again, just like a swipe above, you would add two maps, for example, that overlay with one another, set to two different variables that you can swipe back and forth. And you can add text associated with that. You can, again, check with the fill, do not crop, see what one gives you the better vision. That's way too small in that case, so I'm going to go fill crop. You just kind of want to play around. Don't accept the default ever. You have some control over this. And then what happens is when people ultimately encounter the sidecar, so now my sidecar is going to start happening, the write-up of the element shows up and flows by, and then the next element pops up with the corresponding commentary. Okay. And then of course here you can even swipe back and forth. So that's how you can do a sidecar. What if you wanted to embed video? Let's see if I have any. Let's look at tree canopy video. Okay, the importance of tree canopy. I have no idea what this is, but we'll just grab this YouTube URL, go back to our story map, and let's add video. And here we'd use a link, unless you're uploading a MP3 or whatever, MP4 or whatever. Add that. And so I've added video that's on the web. Okay, so that's another thing we can do. What if we wanted to add a map tour? Okay, so map tours are kind of neat. It corresponds maybe with the nature of the analysis where you're comparing A-graded to D-graded neighborhoods and everything in between. So with a map tour, and you have to play around with map tours a bit, but I usually just do the guided. You can try some of these other ones, but the first thing you do is zoom in on where you want. So I'm going to zoom in over here with Denver since it pops up. Okay. And then we'll start to, you can see what happens when you click on edit. It allows you to do a different sort of base map. Newspaper, we can just do canvas light, for example. You could do, I wouldn't do progress lines. I'm not sure about current location, small screens. You'd have to think about that. Initial zoom level, you can do maybe custom, things like that. Okay. So we'll just save. And then we would want to start adding locations. So I would zoom in, and let's say you would want this to correspond to an A-graded neighborhood. So you're going to click on an A-graded neighborhood. Maybe one here in Wash Park. I'd play around with whether you want to use the map tour settings. I would use the current zoom level. Hit save. Okay. And then you can give it a title, grade A, Wash Park, and then you can add additional details. So, you know, percent tree canopy, 75%, something like that. You can add more text, right? So you can put demographics, whatever you want. And then if you wanted to show an image, for example, a satellite image of those things, I think I already have one here. Let's look at satellite image. You can include a satellite image of that neighborhood showing the tree canopy coverage. Okay. Let me very quickly show you where you can get that satellite imagery from. I usually just use Google Maps, and so you know how to get here on your Google map usually. So what you would do is go down here and click on layers. If satellite's not showing, you'll be able to find it. So you can click on more, click the satellite, but then I would also uncheck labels, which is always checked by default. And that'll give you a cleaner satellite imagery from which to grab a screenshot. And then you can just grab a screenshot of this, save it as a PNG, and upload it as an image. Okay. So that's how you can do the thing. And then when you're ready to add the next stop on the map tour, do the same thing. You would add a location. You could zoom around here wherever you want to add it. Helps if you have a scroll wheel. Right, so I'll just throw one here for some. Use the current zoom level, hit save, give it a title, add an image, and so on. Okay, so that's how you can do a map tour. The other thing you can do is if you wanted to also offer an ability to do Google Street View. So I'm going to embed, and I need a link for Google Street View. So I'm going to go back to my Google Maps here, and let's say I drop my little avatar down onto the street here. What you can do in Google here is go to these three horizontal lines, the menu, the top left, and go to Share or Embed Map. And then you want to embed the map. So you click on that and grab the copy HTML, go back to your embed and hit paste and add it. And that allows people to actually zoom around in your story map with Google Street View. Okay. And again, you can play around with the settings, see what works best. Okay. So that's how you put all the different possible elements together. There's some other things you can play around with. Again, don't always accept the default, play around with the settings, make sure your images are just right. When you're ready, when you're done with your draft, you would need to go to Publish, and again, make sure that everything is finalized. You need to go to Publish, and then by default it's set to private. You can either set it to Organization, which would allow anybody at CC to be able to view it, or you can set it for everyone, anyone, for the public to view it. So I'll just do Public here, and go ahead and hit Publish. And when it's done, I'll just be able to copy that URL, and that could be something I would submit to me or others. Okay, and then I'll be able to scroll through it. So you can see there's the title. I didn't do other headings, but you can see how it'll jump down to the different sections. We've got an interactive map that they can play around with. They can increase its size or open it independently, that kind of thing. Whatever the settings were. Map image with text wrapped around. You have image gallery. You have a swipe. Again, obviously this would all be seamlessly put together. And some of it may not even appear. So you really have to think about what elements help you ultimately tell your story. Okay, so that's it.